Good evening. It's just about 10 o'clock. It's 9:47, and I wanted to have a conversation mainly with myself, but also let everybody, all 20 of you, um, have a bit of an insight as to this pressure that I feel like builds in society in terms of you've always got to be switched on, no rest days, working 12 hours a day, hustle, 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 and go to the gym and find time to go see your friends, uh, building a business and doing all of it. And I think that that's all well and good, but there's a lot to be said for taking a rest, taking a breath, taking a break, having a pause, having a reset, and ultimately resting and realizing that it's all a part of the longer game and being able to actually make progress as time goes by. So I feel like with me personally, I have really over the past sort of 2 years realized that I can actually be way more productive and get way more done over the longer term when I actually take my rest, my recovery, my downtime, my quiet space, my personal space. When I take it like really seriously and prioritize it over pretty much everything to the point where sometimes I'll even cancel plans or purposefully say no to plans in advance because I can see that my diary's getting full, my schedule's getting full. Maybe I just feel like I'm getting tired, I'm getting overwhelmed. And then normally, after I've taken that day or that evening to actually completely rest and recover, the day following, I get more done in that one day than if I would have tried to have stacked 2 or 3 days up and just, sort of getting burnt out. So I feel like it's like really important to realize that taking a rest doesn't mean that you're going backwards. It means that you are pausing and you're building up energy to be able to carry on moving forward. Um, because I think the thing with like productivity and being productive is it's not like linear, it's not like one, two, three, four, five, and it just keeps going. I think that sometimes there are places for stuff like that, and there's a lot to be said for like momentum and habits and rituals and routine. I'm very, very big on all that kind of stuff. However, in the macro and thinking about things a little bit more longer term, it's really important to remember that sometimes you might be like absolutely electric and on fire for like 5 days, and then you need to take a complete day out so that then you can go back and hit it for another 3 days and take 2 days out. And then you might be able to push through for another 5 days rather than pushing through for seven and then like getting ill, being overwhelmed, feeling anxious. The negative thoughts can start to creep in when you're overworked and generally not thinking clearly and thinking straight. And I think that that's a really important extra part to it is I feel like you can be really productive and you can get all this stuff done and you can be, on your routines. But it's when you take space, it's when you take a step back that things click. And sometimes you don't realize that what you are doing isn't actually really aligned or beneficial, or it doesn't serve you as well. And then when you take time out, you've got the opportunity to have some space away from it and become a little bit more objective. It's like if you're doing a workout routine, or if you're following a nutrition plan, or if you're at a job, or if you're in a relationship and you feel like everything's going right because it's familiar, it's processed, it's routine, it's organized, it's go go go, and then you have like a week out and there's like this barrier, there's this resistance, there's an anxiety towards going back. That is some of the most valuable insight that I have ever gotten just from simply having time away from something or somebody or a place. It could even be a specific, like, I don't know, like workplace. If you work in three different places and one of them just really does not agree with you. It's always really good to have some kind of insight as to this kind of stuff, and like I said, don't feel like taking time out is taking time by taking steps backwards, because that insight is really good. Um, I mean, the more like logical way to think about it is it's the same as exercise. You don't get stronger by just training every day consistently. Um, some of the biggest things for me where I've actually made like really fundamental realizations about myself is when I've had time away from a job. And you go back and you just think, this is not working. There's a difference between not enjoying your job and really hating the idea of going to work. Um, and I think there's a bigger conversation to be had for that. But just as a little sprinkle is, remember you've always got a choice. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult, but you do always have a choice, and sometimes it can take planning. It can take being organized. It can take patience. Sometimes you do have to stay in a situation for longer than you ideally want to, but if you can see that there's an option to move out of the situation, it always helps. So yeah, having rest and having insight can be such a massive thing. And I think, again, with the culture, we tend to forget about it, or we don't prioritize it, and we don't make time for it. But like, if you don't do that, then I do genuinely feel like this is where people become like resentful. They stay in relationships that they shouldn't be in. They end up being in a job that they really, really dislike, which I think on a bigger picture, if you're doing something on a consistent basis, which is taking energy away from you, and it puts you in a situation where you can become resentful and just generally not enjoy your time, then there are a lot of negative consequences, especially when you look at like emotional stress. And then when you're in emotional stress, you can go to like negative habits. It's much easier to partake in lower vibe activities, shall we say, in all of the various forms that could come through in. And we generally don't make good decisions, and as well as that, like, it lowers your immune system, and it's way easier to get ill, and then develop like some serious long-term stuff as well. There's quite a lot of studies that have come out over the past, I don't know how long, but like stress, scarcity, fear, all that sort of stuff, which basically suppresses your immune system. It just completely fucks you up over the long term. So yeah, I think remember that like burnout, like emotional detachment, numbness, or stuff like that are signs that you really need to take a fucking break. Whether it's start and implement going to the sauna once a week, twice a week, whether it's having 10 minutes of mindfulness, whether it's like 10 minutes of reading, it doesn't need to be all hippie. It can be like going for a walk every few days and just fucking be in nature where it's a little bit more calm and relaxed. Like taking a really nice long hot shower at the end of the day and having your favourite music on, which is literally something that I've just done. I think it's realising that those moments, those 5 minutes, that 1 hour a week, generally makes an absolute just huge, huge difference. What else do we have? So I think, yeah, realizing that cycles and seasons. I've realized this with myself is that I can work probably like 5, 6, 7 days in a row. So I work like 10-hour shifts. So from the time I leave my door to the time I get back, if I just go to work and come back, it's like 11 and a half hours, including like my break and stuff. So from door to door is like 11 and a half hours. I train consistently 3 to 4 times a week. I go to the sauna consistently like 2 to 3 times a week. I also plan and film and edit videos, as well as seeing my friends, keeping my place tidy. It's not very big, but I still make an effort to keep it clean like once a week. And then just all the general stuff like, shopping, meal prep, organizing, just keeping on top of like my washing. Um, it doesn't might to somebody who's got like 17 children, it might not seem like that much, but there is a lot there, and it could become quite overwhelming. So I've just realized that I really have to plan and make sure that I'm organized in advance. And then the other one is like when I have a day off, I have a day off. Like I don't do anything that I don't want to do, because then that allows me to be super productive throughout the rest of the week. Like I'd rather get home and like call to the shop and like meal prep the day after, and then again while I'm at work, and then go to work and like maybe do a load of washing, and then come home, organize it all, and then the next day like do all my cleaning, so that when it gets to my day off, I can actually have a day off rather than having a day off and I've got like 17 things to do. Because again, it sits in your head, that emotional stress of like, oh, I need to do this, and oh, I need to sort that out. That's not rest. That's not calm. That's not peace. And I've only realized this through having the time off to stand back and realize like, oh, actually, do you know what? When I have a day off and I don't do anything, I actually get more done over 7 to 10 days than if I try and do loads of stuff on my day off and then end up just feeling burnt out, and then I don't want to do anything after work for the next 3 days. So that's what I mean. Taking time out and reflecting on stuff can give you insights as to how you actually perform best. And then I think that like it's really important, and I think this is something that I personally I grew up in a culture in the kickboxing academy that I went to, was like, if you kind of don't do anything, you're considered a little bit lazy. Like there's something wrong with you, blah blah blah. And I think that sometimes you don't need permission to take a rest day. I do genuinely feel like just having a journal, having a diary, just keeping a track of your mood, having an insight, just having a minute with yourself at the end of the day or at the end of the week, and just feeling like, do I need to rest? Where can I put some rest in? Maybe it's not the time for rest. Maybe you do need to pull your finger out and kick yourself up the ass. But I generally feel like in the culture that we've got now, it's kind of easier to do that, depending on the way that you're wired. So yeah, rest well. Don't do too much, because when it's time to go and actually do the work that you need to do, you will have got the energy to go and do it to the best of your ability. All right? Peace and love.